Now, as most of you know, property prices in the US have absolutely skyrocketed over the last few years. In particular, in places like San Francisco and LA, where property prices on average are absolutely staggering. So if we take San Francisco, we are looking at almost $1.6 million on average, and LA has reached nearly $1 million on average. But it's not just these cities where property prices have absolutely skyrocketed. In, for example, a city called Boise, which I'm sure a lot of you outside of the Americas will not have heard of, property prices 10 years ago on average were 165,000 US dollars, but they've now reached on average 526,000 US dollars, which is a hell of an increase. And even more popular places like Austin, property prices are sky high at around 661,000 US dollars. Now, I covered also a city called Detroit about a year or two ago on this channel, and even since I covered Detroit on that video, property prices have gone up a lot, and in the last 10 years they've actually more than trebled. So is there anywhere worth investing in the US? Well, I've put together 5 cities where I think property prices are still fairly reasonable. And coming in at number 5 on this list is the city of San Antonio. Now, situated in the state of Texas, San Antonio, with a population of just under 1.5 million, is the 7th most populous city in the US. Now, although property prices have risen on average from 139,000 US dollars in 2012 to $300,000, San Antonio still scores quite highly on the price to income ratio and compares favorably with cities like Austin and of course many cities in California. Now, San Antonio does have an airport with flights to other cities in America, but also to 4 Mexican cities, namely Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Cancun. Now, as with other cities in Texas, San Antonio is landlord friendly with a very, very efficient eviction process. Now, other advantages of San Antonio include a low unemployment rate, a growing population, 40% of which are renters, and it has one of the fastest growing economies in the US with diverse sectors such as healthcare, military, tourism, and insurance. Now, San Antonio does also have a housing shortage which should keep prices high for the foreseeable future. Now, it also has its downsides. Now, the downsides are crime. San Antonio has a serious crime problem which includes murder and sexual assault. Public transport is not particularly brilliant here, and the city suffers from traffic, and it can be really unbearably hot in the summer. Now, coming in at number 4 on this list is the city of Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia is the 6th biggest city in the US with a population of around 1.6 million. Average prices here are 237,000 US dollars, up from 133,000 US dollars in 2012, which means prices have less than doubled in 10 years. And this is not bad when you compare it to other cities in the US which have experienced a hell of a boom. And in general, Pennsylvania is generally landlord friendly. However, the city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania is just that bit more strict. Now, although the population of Philadelphia is not really growing as fast as other cities in the US, like for example Houston or Austin, it is a city that does have a fair bit going for it. It has an excellent transport system, so you do not need to rely on a car. It has great public parks, is a very walkable city and bikeable city, and is also a city steeped in history and in general has a good quality education. Now, from Philadelphia Airport, you can fly to a number of European destinations, including London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and Zurich. So Philadelphia is not a bad place to put your money in the real estate market. Now, coming in at number 3, and with a population of 400,000, is Tulsa. Now, Tulsa is the second largest city in the state of Oklahoma. Prices are very reasonable at an average of 188,000 US dollars. Now, in 2012, prices were 109,000 US dollars on average. Now, as I've said, whilst in many other cities prices have more than doubled, and in some cases more than trebled, this is not the case in Tulsa. Tulsa also has one of the best price-income ratios in the US when it comes to affordability. Now, although Oklahoma is not as landlord-friendly as Texas, it is more friendly than many other nearby states, and we also have to take into account the property taxes are much higher in Texas than Oklahoma. Now, in Tulsa, expect to pay around 1%, 1.1% property taxes per year. Now, other good things about Tulsa is the broad variety of job opportunities, a good and modern public transport system, a nice climate for most of the year, and a thriving arts and entertainment scene. There are, of course, downsides. Tulsa is not a big city, so there are some limitations when compared to the bigger cities, and also it has quite a high crime rate when compared to other mid-sized cities in the US. But nevertheless, at under 200,000 US dollars on average, we can't complain too much. Now, coming in at number 2 is the city of Chicago. Now, Chicago is the third most populous city in the US with around 2.7 million inhabitants. This is where prices have also less than doubled. In 2012, the average price of a property was 183,000 US dollars, and it now stands at 321,000 US dollars. Now, from Chicago O'Hare Airport, you can fly to numerous destinations around the world. As well as many European cities, you can fly to places like Beijing, Seoul, Taipei, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, Auckland, New Delhi, Hyderabad, Sao Paulo, and Addis Ababa. Now, other advantages of Chicago are that it has the highest number of federal highways and railroads in the US. It is home to a number of Fortune Global 500 companies and Financial Times 500 companies. There is strong rental demand here, in as much as 50% of the population rent. It also has a very high rate of private sector employment, strong economic and job growth, high number of tourists, and Chicago regularly comes out in the top 5 to 10 most visited cities in the US. Now, there are, of course, some negatives. Crime rate, in particular murder rates, are very, very high. They are significantly above the national average. The weather here and the traffic can also sometimes be quite challenging. So, unfortunately, there are some downsides to Chicago. But bearing in mind its size, I think property prices are quite reasonable. Now, coming in at number 1, and I don't think this will surprise too many people, is the city of Houston. Now, Houston is the 4th largest city in the US. It is in the state of Texas, which has no state income tax. Now, although property prices have risen on average from 122,000 US dollars to 272,000 US dollars in the last 10 years, when compared to places like Austin with an average price of 661,000 US dollars, it does seem still fairly reasonable. And of course, prices are also a lot cheaper than places like, as we've said, LA, San Francisco. They are cheaper than Dallas as well. Now, the population here is growing quite fast, which should ensure that there will be probably not a house price crash. So I think if the worst came to the worst, Houston prices may go down, but I don't think there's going to be a crash here. And Houston is actually third when it comes to population growth. So, as I said, population growth, very, very important factor here. Other advantages include that it has the largest medical complex in the world. It has numerous life sciences and biotechnology companies, hospitals, health facilities, and research institutions. And Houston is also the US energy headquarters. Let's also not forget Houston Airport, which flies to cities all over the Americas and a number of destinations in Europe, and also Sydney, Auckland, Tokyo, Taipei, Doha, and Dubai. So even from an international perspective, the city of Houston is very, very, very well connected. And Houston is still reasonably affordable for locals and scores well when it comes to the price income ratio. And let's not forget as well, as with many other cities or most other cities in Texas, Houston is very, very landlord friendly and the eviction process is very quick. So that's it for today. I would actually love to know your thoughts on this. Would any of these cities I've scored in the top 5 make your list? Would they convince you to actually make an investment in the real estate market in the US? Now, from a personal perspective, I would have to say no. I think obviously there are better markets in the world, but if you're determined to make an investment in the US, perhaps these cities are not too bad. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I shall see you soon on the next video.